Once again, we recently had the Religion of Peace engage in an act of cultural enrichment, i.e. an attack on people with a vehicle over Westminster Bridge. In the process, this Islamicist managed to hit several bystanders, including 3 police officers, and 1 woman leapt into the River Thames in an attempt to avoid the vehicle. Then the Islamicist got out of the vehicle and proceeded to attack people with a knife. He obviously hadn't been informed that carrying such a weapon was against the law. He was finally stopped by other police officers that were armed around the Houses of Parliament security cordon. However, prior to that, he managed to stab a police officer and, according to various reports, managed to kill at least 4 people, as well as injuring many others. This once again demonstrates that an unarmed people are a powerless people. This feeling of ever-increasing powerlessness and vulnerability by the indigenous population will also grow as demographics are changed forever against people's consent, as they are called to accommodate more and more Muslims. Couple that with the increasing cockification of men in the West that are more content to argue about appropriate pronouns, and it's not hard to understand why the very West that was the cradle of the Enlightenment and also brought about the end of slavery will enter in the future into a dark dystopia where children grow up to be slaves of an intolerant theocracy. Sure, not all Islamists have necessarily the same murderous intent as this terrorist that was shot a few days ago in Westminster, but many certainly have the same set of beliefs as demonstrated by polls. What is consistent is they both have the same attitudes towards homosexuals, Jews, women, girls, and agree that their texts and all kafirs need to be either subjugated or killed. Despite this, after every such attack, as if scripted, you'll hear voices on the left stating it's important to remember that hashtag not all Muslims are terrorists and Muslims don't support this. Well, then perhaps they can explain to me the following screenshot from France 24 Arabic live video feed. Note that the smiley faces and thumbs up and them saying God curse the infidels. Quote, that's how the lone wars of Allah operate. Here's a screenshot from Al Jazeera Live. Quote, I was watching Al Jazeera Live. You wouldn't believe the number of likes. Well done and Allah Akbar. Here is a moderate Muslim perspective. Quote, I'm seeing rumblings that's what's going on in London in an attack from radical Islam. If so, there were a likely good reason for it. But hey, as the left and all the Islam apologists like to bleat in the fake stream media, hashtag not all Muslims, right? Piers Morgan in defiance tweeted out, quote, these cowardly bastards can maim, murder and terrorize all they like, but they'll never win, especially not in this city, in this country. Well, Piers, if you mean by women winning change in society, then they are winning with the full complicity of the left and the global elites. One of the ways that the Islamists are winning is by the very acts of jihadism. The sad result of continual Islamicist attacks in the West has caused many of us to become numb, as jihadist attacks have become ever more frequent and ever more deadly. Islamic martyrdom missions have become more normalized, and they have been greatly assisted by figures such as London Muslim Mayor, that has ties to Islamic extremism, that cannot be talked about because it will be Islamophobic. As non-Muslims have retreated outside of the capital, a sizable Muslim bloc has replaced it, coupled with many foreign persons who have come from unstable and relatively corrupt entities more disposed to vote for welfare generous parties such as the one that Sadiq Khan is a part of. Sadiq Khan, who is a very good example of things to come, of the tribalism of voting patterns and what is left of the liberal voting democracies in the West, has stated that terrorist actions are part and parcel of living in a major city, being that the only kind of terror that happens in cities in the West over the last 20 years have been exclusively Islamic. His tacit approval of jihadist support of his religiousists' hard jihadist tactics is abundantly clear. He has also little time for moderate Muslim voices, as he refers to them as Uncle Toms. It may also explain why it took him at least 5 hours to respond to the latest attack. Other figures on the day of the attack, such as Tommy Robinson and the interviewer from Rebel Media, were both critical of the attempts of change agents to normalise what 30 years ago we would have found unacceptable. Tommy was particularly critical of the UK government allowing into the country 400 Islamicist fighters, and the figure of £9 billion that is currently spent to monitor persons deemed as potential threats to the state by Islamists. Thanks to the security forces, they have managed to foil a number of attacks, but as was also pointed out by Tommy, 50,000 people in the UK have downloaded a certain terrorist manual that would have likely detailed how to conduct such an attack as occurred on the 23rd of March. Perhaps this very same jihadist downloaded the very same manual. You would think that these figures like Tommy will be applauded for taking such a brave stance towards the operatives of global elites and their seditious practices and allowing terrorists to enter and fester within their sovereign borders. Not according to the following text. Quote, far-right figures like Tommy Robinson are vile opportunists using victims of today's attack to spread their anti-Muslim message. That's right, some members of the media are more upset that Tommy Robinson had shown up to the scene of an attack than those who actually suffered from the attack itself. One tweet that did express concern with the attack was even more concerned as to how it might make Muslims look, rather than the victims. Quote, in moments at real Donald Trump will begin to exploiting the attack in London today. Do not allow this to be an indictment of Islam, of Muslims. Another feature of the normalization process with the agenda to cause us to capitulate is the scripted response given by most politicians that attempt to pull the wool over our eyes by stating that through such attacks, though they are horrible, they do not represent Islam. Islam is a religion of peace, and its followers are peaceful people. Prime Minister Theresa May has pretty much stayed on script when she spoke of diverse cultures of the nations being united against the efforts of violent tyranny to undermine the society's diverse values. One line that was particularly interesting was when she stated, these terrorists that strike at the heart of our capital city, where all people of all nationalities and cultures come together to celebrate the values of liberty, democracy, and freedom of speech. It was interesting because she laughingly spoke about freedom of speech. She neglected to state that this freedom of speech only applies and only operates when you don't wander off the ideological reservation of cultural Marxism and multiculturalism. I would have asked her if I had the opportunity, why are Brits being arrested for tweets while Islamicists are free to walk around Parliament wrapped in the Islamicist flag? I would have also asked her why she even neglected or purposely left out the part about almost a quarter of Muslims that live in the UK want the Sharia or Islamic jurisprudence that is antithetical to liberty, democracy, and freedom of speech that she refers to, implemented throughout the country. Having said that, we should not be too surprised at Theresa May's globalist scripted statements. This is the same political hack who stated that the Westminster attacks were not Islamic, and many Britons benefit from Sharia law. Reading between the lines, what May wants us to make sure we all understand is that cherished values that are derived from the enrichment of diversity are more important than anyone's lives. Another part of the normalization process is the comical repetition of the same steps within Western countries to any Islamic terror attack. These scripted responses have become altogether predictable. Step 1. Facebook flag filters will be available, in this case the UK's. Step 2. The lighting up of some buildings in national colours of the place where the act took place, as well as candlelight vigils. Step 3. The media will incessantly push the narrative of how it is Muslims that are the real victims, as if they've been misunderstood, and indeed it is a truly pacifist religion. It was also pushed further the same narrative of victimhood by trying to find stories where people said mean and hateful things to Muslims, whether genuine or otherwise, as if there's a moral equivalency between insults and people that actually died. Step 4. Virtual signaling as how tolerant we are and wait, yes, for the next jihadist attack. Thankfully, the script is wearing thin and driving more and more persons into the nationalist camp all across Europe. Let's not forget that this is the same country that the authorities allowed the grooming, rape and pimping out of thousands of young white girls by gangs of Pakistani men for the sole reason that the young girls were white and their sexual abusers were not. This also powerfully demonstrated the concept of white privilege is a massive lie. The authorities did not want to point out that these men who saw white girls as easy meat were the majority of those in the capital of London, i.e. not European in origin. Cultural Marxism, or political correctness, determined the inaction towards these girls for many years. In the same way, cultural Marxism will also determine the decisions that governments take or neglect to take. Therefore, expect to see more persons of Islamic intercultural exchange in Britain. If you think this last statement is disingenuous, please consider the threat of Islamicist Erdogan threatening to send Muslim migrants with the vow that Europeans will not be able to walk safely on the streets. Turkey's threats are not without basis as it holds many migrants within its country, and has threatened to release them if it doesn't manage to extort enough billions in euros from the EU. Despite this blackmail relationship, Turkey is held up to be an ally of the West, while Russia, that is killing these Islamists, is seen as a world pariah. As Trump attempts to drain the swamp, Britain and other Western nations prefer to give lip service to doing the same. The imported ideology of Islam is frequently sharing its culture that we have seen in Nice, Brussels, Belgium, and now London, among others. Should this be any surprise to any of us, the Islamic world divides everyone as being part of the House of Islam or the House of War. 51% of its revered collective writings are about the kafir, a term for non-believers that is stronger than just someone who doesn't believe in its teachings. Furthermore, each one of these writings are all negative towards non-believers. Some have commented recently that we need to help support persons and efforts that are trying to reform Islam into a genuine religion of peace. although I applaud those brave souls that call on an Islamic reformation, put inside almost impossible odds to succeed in this task, the premise for this call, being the past reformation of Martin Luther, is flawed. The reason why it's flawed is Catholicism is an apostate religion that moved away from the teachings of Jesus Christ. The Reformation was a somewhat attempt to re-establish the teachings of Jesus Christ, but the Bible terms as the Prince of Peace. By contrast, the whole religion of Islam in essence is centered around the life of Muhammad, who after leaving Mecca and moving to Medina promoted rape and conquest, amongst other things. Reformers would hence have to do the opposite of the Reformation and move away from the central founder's teachings, so that it ceases to be Islam anymore. Furthermore, what these commentators also fail to realize is that when you make account of the whole body of its revered texts, Islam is only 14% a religion. The other 86% is a political system that is at least tyrannical as any of the dystopias of the 20th centuries on the left, such as National Socialism or International Socialism, which helps explain this weird alliance between the regressive left and Islam. In fact, Hitler is quoted as wishing that Islam had conquered Germany when it expanded into Europe after Muhammad died. He felt the brutal warrior element of Islam was better suited to National Socialism than the compassionate Christian faith. He sadly will get his wish now thanks to Angela Merkel and her immigration policies to replace the indigenous Germans with a brutal jihadist. In the light of all of this, we are deluding ourselves if we think we are only facing a heretical minority that have hijacked what is in truth a pacifist faith. It's clear that we, in the House of War, will continue to face bomber squads and massacres that are happening all too frequently, and not only in the Islamic world, but also in the West. This is the dilemma that the West finds itself in. It finds itself incapable of admitting the steep demographic and cultural decline that it's culturally undergoing. Its oldest adversary never gave up at the gates of Vienna, but only called a tactical truce. Furthermore, it is moving in to fill the vacuum as our population numbers fall, and those of Muslims grow at a rapid pace, and we at the same time, through the welfare system, are paying for our demise. So it seems Islam is playing the West like a fiddle. The attack on the West is threefold by Islam. Number one, hard jihadist attacks that never seem to end and are only seemingly looking to increase by the year. Number two, the demographic jihad of never-ending migration and the setting up of Islamic cultural enclaves in every major city in the West. And finally, number three, using Western values of tolerance and altruism and weaponizing them against us, with ever more demands made on the host countries and their public purses. You do have to give it to the jihadists and the global elites that are orchestrating this demographic suicide of the West. Shoes, water bottles, suicide vests, the usual guns and knives, and now the use of plain old motorized vehicles to commit bloody jihad have all become normalized. The West has become a collection of proverbial chickens that keep on inviting the fox into the henhouse, and everyone wonders why this keeps on happening. The global elites tell us through the EU and individuals such as Peter Sutherland at the UN that we must celebrate cultural enrichment and diversity and de-invest ourselves of our survivalist instinct and nationalist identity. We must be ready to usher in a globalist border paradigm when these hordes at our sovereign borders are like barbarians of the past. The public was never consulted on whether they wanted to be demographically replaced in their own countries by outsiders and profoundly hostile cultures. In the other aftermath of the Rivers of Blood speech, several polls suggested that 67 to 82% of the UK population agreed with Enoch Powell's negative opinion with regards to mass immigration into the country, and his supporters stated that this large public following helped the Conservatives win the 1970s general election. Furthermore, Brexit was also a movement that was largely driven by the immigration issue and the borderless policies of the EU that undermine national sovereignty. In fact, in every country in the West where multicultural diversity and enrichment is being foisted upon, when the people are asked, they said they did not want it. But it was forced upon them anyway, and to force them into silence, they must use speech laws and collude with social media to shut down dissenting voices. That's why governments, like the British one, can pretend to us that we have social cohesion in cities such as London with balkanized minorities that refuse to integrate with the indigenous populations and operate no-go zones. Cities like London that can no longer be regarded as genuinely British anymore. If you like this content and would like to hear more like it in the future, please press the subscribe button on our YouTube channel. Also, don't forget to press the bell as well, or you won't be alerted when new content is uploaded. Furthermore, we at the Monolabi Network are not funded by either wealthy foundations or George Soros for his open society. We are self-financed and also subsist through donations. If you would like to support an independent media, please consider becoming a cherished Patreon contributor for a mere $1 per month. This is far less than your cable access that bundles fake news channels like CNN and MSNBC. And finally, please don't forget to share this video with as many patriots as possible. Thank you, and God bless the Republic and all the virtuous principles it stands for.